Good afternoon. Big news day in footy. Gil McLachlan and the AFL are going to speak at 2:30, a landmark AFLW pay deal. The Commission also discussed the timing of the grand final yesterday. I'll get to this afternoon's announcement and the grand final shortly. Also want to discuss the latest on James Hird's coaching ambitions. Had a story on 7 News regarding that last night. And just want to discuss some trade news as well. Jordan De Goey, Dustin Martin, Angus Brayshaw and Luke Jackson. But off the top this morning, the Bombers. I just got back from the truck, Ben Rutten's press conference. He's spoken. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on their performance in Dreamtime against the Tigers. Doesn't get any easier for the Bombers. The Tigers in such good form this Saturday night. But the truck was pretty clear this morning. He spoke very candidly about he feels and acknowledges that their tackling pressure has been conditional. The tackling and their pressure has been conditional all season. Dylan Shealy's back to play this week after Luke Parker singled Sheil out last week. Rutten didn't have a problem with Parker in terms of mocking Sheil. He didn't think that was out of line given the way that the team collectively performed and their intensity. Caldwell is less likely to play this week given his AC shoulder injury. Just also Nick Cox, he's at least 10 weeks off. I'm told he's out for the season with that Liz Frank ankle injury. Stringer is working towards being available after the bye. Just for some context, it was mouth guards in type stuff at training today. It was full contact. And this is a short clip of what Ben Rutten had to say to it was a media pack today. There's a lot of focus out there.
Oh, look, the players aren't satisfied. They're not happy with what they're doing. You know, it's not about me necessarily cracking the whip. I need to be really clear on the expectations. We need to provide the environment, the training conditions. And I think our leaders, our playing group have owned it this week. You know, and they're the ones that can do something about it with their actions on Saturday night. We're really clear on the journey we're on. We're embarking. We want to be a consistent finals premiership club. Right, and that's a journey we're on, but it doesn't guarantee it's going to be smooth sailing. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have hiccups, bumps in the road, opportunities for us to galvanise and get better. And that's what we're seeing this time as. You know, it's a time where we can review really strongly, get really clear on what's working, what's not, be really clear on the expectations that we need to be able to consistently perform at the level. Now, clearly we're not there right now, but that's the journey we're on, and you know, we're not changing from that.
Also on the Bombers, I've reported overnight that Paul Brasher, who's a highly respected president and chairman of the Bombers, he will step aside at the end of next year because that's the end of his maximum 12 years under the Constitution on the board. So there'll be a bit of change later next year. But he's, super highly regarded, Paul Brasher, and he'll step off at the end of next year or work towards that as per the Constitution. Revealed that last night. So there will be some change at the top of Essendon at least towards the end of next year. There's a lot of focus on Paul at the moment because Xavier Campbell, the CEO, has been in the spotlight over the last 24 hours on two issues. His 2-year contract extension, which the board's given him beyond this year. That was revealed by Mitch Cleary on our 7 News. Essendon agreed to that approximately a month ago. It's controversial because a lot of Bombers supporters are worried about the on-field performance at the moment. Look, just to be clear, Xavier's got Essendon really well set up. Off-field, record, huge sponsorship. You only have to drive out to their facility, which I think you can go to. It's a public facility in large part, and have a look at what he's created out there, or helped create, also steered them through the COVID crisis. So there's a whole argument in favour of Xavier having been given that extension. He was in demand from the AFL until recently, and is a highly regarded CEO. Having said that, he has tied himself up to a lot of these football appointments over the years now, since about 2014, and some of those, I guess, haven't gone to plan. And when you attach yourself to football appointments, Ben Rutten, extending John Worsfold, they've gone through footy managers, Neild, Richardson, Marnie, moved on Rob Kerr at one stage. Xavier's got a running tally now of football decisions, and I think a few supporters are acutely aware of that. Having said that, he laid out a 5-year plan, Xavier, which is to win a flag by 2026, and the board at the moment is backing Xavier's plan in that regard. So he's got off-field right. Obviously, on-field, they've got a few challenges, to say the least, at the moment. There's also calls, according to the Herald Sun, by some prominent supporters in a letter to Paul Brasher to investigate further some alleged HR issues dating back some time. And I think Paul will address that issue to members, that Paul being the president, will address that issue to members this afternoon. Separately, Nova Peris has come out in the Herald Sun and the News Corp press and raised some concerns in regards to her involvement with the Long Walk, and singling out Xavier as saying that she's no longer associated with the Long Walk. I can report that the general manager of the general manager at the club, Leanne Brooke, handles the Long Walk. She's the CEO of the Long Walk and sits on the executive of the club. She spoke to staff passionately, I'm told this morning, about the club's support of the Long Walk, and in particular, Xavier Campbell's support of the Long Walk, and spoke to staff and addressed that issue directly with them this morning. So that's just some background there in terms of what's going on. I think there's some context there as well, and I'm endeavouring to speak to Nova Peris on this topic today, but I think that Nova Peris did a great job securing a huge amount of funding, up to $9 million for the club as part of getting the Indigenous Museum at Tullamarine, and did a great job. And I think at one point was looking to work with the club on a employment basis as well, and perhaps those talks didn't go as well as she might have hoped at one stage. Anyway, I'm endeavouring to speak to Nova Peris today because she's got some genuine concerns, and I think they'll be addressed by Paul Brasher this afternoon. It's tiring just speaking about the Bombers. There's a lot of passionate supporters that often get stuck into me on social media. I've got a balanced view on the Bombers. We've got a few issues going at the moment, and I'll try and cover them as best I can. Anyway, let's talk about some football and some AFL matters on a bit of a lighter topic. This is a good topic. Gil McLachlan will speak this afternoon at AFL House at 2:30. They've reached a landmark agreement on the AFLW pay deal that was finalised overnight. It'll see players' pay roughly doubled. We'll get details on that this afternoon. It'll be a short-term deal because Gil now needs to go and negotiate the TV deal and make sure he's got the money in the kitty to pay for all this. But it's a great deal for the women's football, which will start again in August. Just a heads up, overnight I was pointed out to me that holding 2 seasons in a year this year is going to be expensive. So we'll get some details from Gil this afternoon, I should say, on how the wages will be doubled and how much they're spending on AFLW this year, but clearly the game's prepared to make that investment, which is fantastic. In terms of the TV, there was no official announcement overnight from the AFL regarding the grand final time slot this year. Look, I expect that it will be twilight. Richard Goyder, the Commission Chairman, supports that position. Perth was seen as a success. But again, no official announcement. There was a bit of a willing debate on Footy Classified last night between Carol and Eddie on the economics of all this. I mean, there's some good figures actually in a Fox Footy article today. You know, just for some context, Melbourne and the Bulldogs rated on Channel 7 in the metro market, roughly 3 million viewers for the grand final just gone. The last traditional time slot, for some context, in 2019 did at 2:30 at the MCG approximately 2.197 million metro viewers. So my point on all this is pretty simple. I made it on Friday Night Football. Of course, the traditional time slot's good at the MCG, but just from a commercial perspective, at the moment you've got obviously the women who want a well-deserved pay rise. The men will want a pay rise, a big one. The clubs want more money. They want greater distribution, particularly the bigger clubs want to square up on that front with a lot of money going to the Suns and the Giants. Tasmania is going to cost money. Fixing up this community umpiring issue and getting more and better umpires coming through and encouraging pathways there. That's going to cost money, as will reinvesting in community footy post-COVID. And the coaches want an increased salary cap. So I'm pretty simple. Studied economics at uni. You got to pay for all this. So you want to do a commercial deal. The most commercial deal is to get the most eyeballs, which is to negotiate a twilight and finalise a twilight spot for the grand final. Does it break with tradition? Yes, but I've just listed a whole bunch of stakeholders who want more money. Doesn't grow on trees. James Hird is warming to the idea of returning to senior coaching. I know there's debate as to whether he's done enough senior coaching or coaching indeed in recent years, because he's been away from the game now for 7, 8, 9, 10 years to warrant stepping back into senior coaching. He's back from London, and Duck, by the way, Wayne Carey, I think on the midweek rub, spoke about that passionately on Triple M this week. But he's back from London, Hirdy, to cut a long story short, and he could start his expanded role, which is being an assistant coach at the Giants, as soon as Sunday against the Eagles, which is what I've reported. Does he want to go back to Essendon? I know he's concerned about the Bombers, I'm told from sources close to Hirdy. I think that will never happen. Let's just be absolutely clear on that. But I think he would be prepared to help them out. He's clearly a concerned bystander in that regard. But more realistically, this is the Giants' job that could be up for grabs, and it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out, because I am told from sources directly linked and close to Hirdy that he is warming to the idea of returning to senior coaching. It's a tantalising prospect for a lot of Hirdy supporters out there. I'll just finish off with some trade news or gossip or whatever you want to call it today. I'll make a lot of trade calls. Jordan De Goey, St Kilda potentially interested. I was assured overnight they certainly haven't put any type of formal offer to Jordan De Goey. The point there is it would need board approval at St Kilda. And I think a lot of clubs, if you were to go near De Goey, it's not to say you wouldn't get it, but you need complete buy-in, which I've mentioned on this podcast, and that includes St Kilda. It was funny yesterday. Scott Gullen had a good story in his column. I'm dirty on one of the stories in his column this week on me. I might get to that at the end of this podcast, but he had a good story yesterday where Geordie's going to appear at a pub night or like a sort of a pie night, $49 a head, which is promised as a tell-all, or he'll reveal all or speak about everything. He hasn't formally spoken publicly since that, controversial New York incident. So for $49, I might go and get a ticket and go along, but there'll be some trade interest in him as well. But St Kilda potentially interested there. Dustin Martin, the rumour about him potentially wanting to go to Sydney won't go away. Damien Hardwick sort of added a bit of fuel to this week, where he said whatever Dustin's decision is moving forward, it's up to Dustin, and he would have Hardwick's blessing. That comes from the coach himself. Look, Dusty hasn't directly addressed this issue yet, nor is Ralph Carr, his manager at the moment. He's contracted to Richmond for at least another 2 years. I agree with Matthew Lloyd on Footy Classified. This wouldn't necessarily be a lose-lose for Richmond. It would free up salary space if Dusty moved on, and they'd get picks for Dusty. It all depends on Richmond and whether they think they're still in contention next year and the year after and the year after that. It's just a mature, list decision on their part at some point in time. Dusty's 30. Would he be valuable up forward for the duration and balance of his career? Of course he would. Could he play beyond the rest of the 2 years of the balance of his contract? Of course he could. You could put him in a forward pocket. He might kick 30, 40, 50 goals. But, Richmond might actually now get something for Dusty at that age 30 if they form the judgment that, A, Dusty wanted to go, and B, they weren't in contention, beyond this year. So there's a mature discussion, which I'm sure Richmond would be having in that regard, and also taking into account what Dusty wants to do. There's a bit of a limitation, all this. It's money. Dusty's got up to $1.2 million a year remaining on the 2 years of his contract back-ended at Richmond, and the Giants and Sydney wouldn't be in a position to pay anything like that. Having said that, if Sydney reduce Buddy's money next year, say from 1.5 back to $400,000 or $500,000, Buddy might be prepared to play for that in the twilight of his career. You could allocate that money towards Dusty, and in theory, you could have Dusty and Buddy playing in a forward line for the Swans with Heaney, Parker, and Mills delivering it to them, and that would put bums on seats. It'd pay for itself probably in spades, and they could indeed be a premiership contender. So, look, let that conversation play out. It all depends on what Richmond want to do, and in particular, what Dusty wants to do. And I'll just leave you with one concerning Melbourne. Obviously, a lot of contract focus at the moment on Angus Brayshaw and Luke Jackson. The word I get, and it's not surprising, this is that those deals are interlinked in the sense that if Melbourne pay Jackson the money that he'll obviously command in the market, there's a high probability that Brayshaw will then go and take the money, for example, that Fremantle are offering. So, again, we'll get better clarity on that at about the halfway point, because for the moment they've effectively put off those talks, both those superstar players. A big day, highlighted by Essendon. We'll get the AFLW announcement this afternoon. Hurdy, interested in and certainly warming to the idea of senior coaching. We'll see if he gets a chance. That'll play out in the next few months as well. Also, the grand final. We should get an official announcement on a twilight spot in the next few days. Triple M rocks football. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening.
That was Tom Brown's News. Come back every Monday, Thursday and Friday for more, and subscribe to Triple M Footy on Listener or wherever you listen to get all our podcasts throughout the season. For Ream Hot Water and McDonald's, Triple M rocks footy.